amongst the many famous heroines of history. None of them stand out like Elizabeth I. She ruled a small, fragile kingdom racked with internal strife and turned it into a vigorous major power with the commerce, politics, arts, and military to show for it. Because of her achievements, the Elizabethan age remains one of England's most important and transformative periods in its history. As such, the worries and anxieties that came about towards its end, and how it would affect England, became a focus point for William Shakespeare's Hamlet. Elizabeth was born on September 7, 1533, to King Henry VIII and his second wife, Anne Boleyn. Henry VIII's difficulty in siring a son to maturity made him go through 6 wives, 2 of them divorced, 2 more dead of natural causes, and the remaining 2 killed, resulting in him bringing England under the fold of the Protestant Reformation. Anne Boleyn was killed on the orders of Henry when Elizabeth was just 2. Going forward, Elizabeth was under the loving care of Henry's 6th and last wife, Catherine Parr. Henry VIII died in 1547, leaving his weak 10-year-old son, Edward VI, to inherit England. Due to illness, Edward died in 1553, leaving the throne to his half-sister Mary. Mary was a religious zealot, bent on returning England, by force if necessary, to the Roman Catholic Church. Mary became the Queen of England, a Catholic monarch in a Protestant nation. Her marriage to another fervently Catholic monarch, Philip II of Spain, made her more unpopular. So unpopular, in fact, that Elizabeth became the prime candidate for any rebellious nobles looking to overthrow Mary and return a Protestant to the throne. Because of this, Mary had Elizabeth locked in the Tower of London in 1554. A series of extensive interrogations turned up not even a crumb of evidence to accuse Elizabeth of treason, so she was set free. Mary revived the laws against heretics. For 3 years, rebel corpses were publicly displayed, and Protestant heretics were relentlessly executed, some 300 being burned at the stake. The Queen earned the nickname Bloody Mary, and her along with her husband were hated in England. An unpopular, unsuccessful war with France resulted in the loss of Calais, England's last foothold in Europe. To make matters worse for Mary personally, she was childless and grief-stricken by a series of false pregnancies. Luckily for the Protestants of England, Mary died in November 1558, and Elizabeth ascended the throne of England amidst widespread public celebration. Elizabeth became queen during a time when society was still very patriarchal. Men were considered naturally endowed with authority, while women were thought to be intellectually and morally unfit to govern. Men saw themselves as rational people. They saw women as creatures likely to be dominated by impulse and passion. Elizabeth's reign set out to disprove this. With her ascension, England had now been restored to Protestantism. The Act of Supremacy in 1559 declared Elizabeth to be the supreme governor of the Church of England. Priests had to swear oaths of royal supremacy or risk losing their positions. Unlike her predecessor, Elizabeth wanted to toe a fine line between Protestantism and Catholicism. In the face of calls for more radical reforms, Elizabeth felt like she had gone far enough. Any attempt to widen the divide between the two denominations could risk instability and public disorder. However, there was still a thorn in her side. Mary Stuart, the exiled Queen of Scotland, had been seeking refuge in England since 1568. As a Catholic, and with a claim to the throne of England, she was regarded by many in the Catholic world to be the legitimate Queen of England. Mary would be found out to be involved in some form to revolt in the north of England, as well as a conspiracy against Elizabeth's life. Elizabeth had Mary imprisoned. In 1570, Pope Pius V had Elizabeth excommunicated. Any Catholic country, like Spain or France, now had legal backing to depose Elizabeth. This was added onto a decade later by Pope Gregory XIII, who openly endorsed the idea of killing Elizabeth. Thusly, under the direction of Sir Francis Walsingham, one of Elizabeth's top spies, the Babington plot was uncovered in 1586. Mary's involvement was as clear as day. Elizabeth was hesitant and unwilling to sign the death warrant, but Mary's head rolled regardless in February 1587. In the wider international picture, England was heading for war with Spain. Throughout the 1570s and 1580s, famed English mariners like Sir Francis Drake had been terrorizing and pirating Spain's fleets around the world. But by the mid-1580s, it became clear that Philip II was constructing an enormous armada, christened as the Enterprise of England, that would transport thousands of Spanish troops to conquer England and once again reverted back to Catholicism. In a successful attempt to delay the fleet, Francis Drake singed the King of Spain's beard near the port of Cadiz in 1587. Though she was always reluctant to spend money from the royal treasury, Elizabeth gave enough money to the English Navy to build a fleet of well-armed ships. In July 1588, in one of the most famous naval encounters in history, the English fleet defeated the Spanish Armada. What remained of the Armada was caught in a terrible storm. While reviewing the troops mustered to intercept the impending Spanish landing parties, she declared that, "I know that I have the body of a weak and feeble woman, but I have the heart and stomach of a king, and of a king of England too." Perhaps one of England's most important achievements takes form in William Shakespeare, arguably the most important playwright of the Elizabethan era and of the English language. William Shakespeare, baptized on April 26, 1564, in the county of Warwickshire, emerged from humble beginnings, his father a burgher and his mother an heiress to some land. Educated in the local grammar school, he chose not to go to university and instead married Anne Hathaway at 18. His family expanded with the baptism of his children, Susanna, Hamlet, and Judith. Little is known of his activities until his presence in London's theatre scene in around 1592, when he faced initial ridicule. Nevertheless, Shakespeare rose to prominence by capturing noble patronage and acquiring a coat of arms and a substantial home, as people began recognizing his talent. He honed his craft, becoming the playwright of the age. By 1594, he was an integral member of the Lord Chamberlain's Company, a company of actors which helped with the unprecedented success of the Globe Theatre. Amongst his vast category of plays, his masterpiece Hamlet stands out. Shakespeare subverts the expectations of a revenge tragedy with his exploration of moral dilemmas and existential questions, exemplified in Prince Hamlet's introspective contemplations on life, death, and human experience. Queen Elizabeth is famously known, both today and back in the 16th century, as the Virgin Queen for her refusal to marry and conceive. This reluctance likely comes from her unstable childhood regarding her father's marital status, especially with the death of her own mother at her father's orders, depriving her of many potential female role models early in life. Another reason comes from the amount of power she would surrender when it came to marriage. She zealously guarded her power from even the most trusted. Nonetheless, she continued to have a long line of suitors: Philip II, Henry III of France, Francois the Duke of Alençon, even Ivan the Terrible, the Tsar of Russia. By the time Hamlet was first performed, around the year 1600, Elizabeth was in her late 60s. She had no children, and it was unclear who would inherit her crown once she died. In Hamlet's Denmark, just as in England, the royal succession is uncertain. Claudius hastily marries Queen Gertrude in order to secure his claim, and Hamlet is openly unhappy about it, to the point of wanting to kill Claudius and himself. The House of Tudor will die with Elizabeth's death. and Shakespeare's contemporaries felt not that a period of prosperity in English history would die with it. Much like Elizabeth, Queen Gertrude is old, and Hamlet does not want children. Queen Elizabeth I's death in 1603 marks the end of a remarkable era in English history. Elizabeth's health had been declining, evident in her withdrawal from public life and refusal of medical care. Yet, her reluctance to name an heir stemmed from deep-seated fears of abandonment and political chaos that could ensue from ambitious noblemen vying for power. Amidst rumors of foreign invasion and internal rebellion, James VI of Scotland emerged as the logical successor, despite being viewed as a foreigner under English law. His lineage, the son of Mary, the Queen of Scotland, and grandson of King Henry VII, positioned him favorably, paving the way for a peaceful transition upon Elizabeth's passing. Shakespeare's Hamlet mirrored the anxieties of the time surrounding Elizabeth's succession. The play's depiction of Fortinbras's impending invasion and Laertes' rebellion resonated with the uncertainties of succession, reflecting the prevailing fears of foreign interference and internal unrest. Elizabeth's death not only marked the end of the Tudor dynasty, but also heralded a new chapter in English history under James VI and the Stuart dynasty. Elizabeth's reign, characterized by artistic flourishing and military prowess, left a lasting legacy of national pride, despite underlying social tensions and religious strife.